Hello, Brazil. I am delighted to be able to participate in your masterclass. Thank you, Leandro, for the invitation. And I want everyone who's participating to know that I have the most regard for those of us who do this work. And yes, I say us, because that has been my career. I have worked with CEOs. I know what it is to track information, follow executives, make certain that they are in the right place at the right time with the right information. And today, as the world changes, so does the role of assisting become even more critical, so that an understanding of a global world now becomes a huge aspect of what it is you are expected to do on a moment-to-moment basis. So global interface, which we didn't have years ago, is now integral to the role that you support. And managing executives' lives as they travel globally, usually 80% of the time, means that you are behind the scenes, making sure that everything is managed to perfection. So if someone stops me and asks, what are the most critical skills today? What comes to mind? Attention to detail. And that means that you double check everything that it is you do. And there are some standards that assistants must uphold and must encourage within what it is they do. To me, the most important thing is having a sense of humor. So let me give you an example. I would get a telephone call that says, and we all know the famous "where's the car?" Melba, I cannot find the car. And this is a gentleman who managed a global industry. And I would say, where are you calling me from? And he'd say, I am in the lobby. And so the first thing you need to do is to go out to the sidewalk, and the car is there. But you do that with a smile and with caring, because what makes this role so special is the fit, the personality fit, and the realization that you build expertise around the needs of that executive, which thereby means that you are also growing and expanding within what it is you do all the time, which is what makes this role so unique and so difficult to define. There are 4 principles that I speak about all the time: confidence, perseverance, patience, and courage. This role requires an absolute commitment to those principles. Let me tell you why. Confidence, it means you model your organization's core values. You represent the company you support in order to make that executive's life better. There is a professionalization that's required. And in our work at the Duncan Group, we are able to determine which attributes drive outstanding performance. And we know that personal commitment, judgment, and accountability are essential. Judgment. Know when to interrupt. Know when to ask for information. Read the moment is what I say. Judgment, read the moment. You can tell from someone's body language how comfortable they are. You can tell from someone's eyes whether they are focusing on what you are saying or they're pretending to focus on what you are saying. So get to know that executive. Moment to moment behavior response, essential. Accountability, you make a mistake, you own it. It doesn't matter whether you made the mistake or someone else did. You own it. accountability for what it is you have to get done. There's no question, if you are committed to doing this work, that means the executive you support relies on you to keep to those commitments. So that trust factor is inherent within this relationship, not just the skills, the trust. So to me, professionalism is a way of saying, well, I'm going to do what I have committed to you that I will do. It is reaffirming the fact that you realize what's most important at the moment and you get it done. Professionalism, how you speak, how you enter a room, how you speak to others from different countries, how you know about social skills and behaviors. All of those get wrapped into your professionalization. You build an expertise by educating yourself in the functions that you don't do well. And most of us know what we don't do well. We tend to ignore it and pretend it'll go away, but you know something, in this role, it does not. Everything you do ties to your level of expertise, so that moral courage and professionalism are closely linked. To become a strategic asset, it means that you can anticipate where problems are most likely going to be. There's a CEO who said to me, Melba, it's seeing around corners. And that's because you are sitting in a space where everything comes to you and where you have to analyze moment to moment what transaction, what transition, what you must undertake in order to be able to manage the upheavals that are constantly at your desk, the distractions. What you planned for that day sometimes just never happens because everything else interferes. So knowing what's most important to the executive you support or the team is critical. And a lot of assistants will say, well, I work for more than one person. How do I do that? You ask. You ask, and you spend time speaking with the executives, each one, to find out what's most important to each one of those managers. And when I speak about strategic asset, that's when you become a strategic asset. Suppose you have a conflict. Suppose you have two executives who are asking you to do something at the same time. Well, confidence. You step into that space and you say, I have two requests that fall at the same time. I cannot manage both. Let's decide which takes priority. So that you're always working for the benefit of the individuals you support. It has nothing to do with you. It has to do with who the executives are, what they need to get done, and what your role is in getting that done. So in the confidence realm, we speak about your organization's core values, professionalism, building expertise, and becoming a strategic asset. The next principle I'd like us to consider is perseverance. And we all know what that means. But the question is, how does it apply to the role of assisting? Well, I sort of mentioned it before, moral courage. You act on what you know. You also identify what you don't know. It means you have the courage, the ability, and the charisma, which is a word I love for assistants, for taking responsibility for your actions. So if you don't know how to proceed, or you do not understand what is being asked of you, the responsibility is yours to own that. And to make sure that you do not take a step to perform that assignment until you are confirmed and comfortable with your understanding of expectation. So to me, perseverance means that you're always, always, always working to ensure that the critical details of any assignment, are the details that you are able to manage. I think for assistants, one of the most remarkable assets of this role that go without being recognized is that you have a constantly changing position description. Constantly changing position description. We can write all the most brilliant position descriptions for the candidates with whom we work globally. However, when you speak to that candidate a year after they have been in the role, and there's sometimes the reality that what we wrote and what that person is actually doing do not correlate, and somehow need to be even more defined. So what I ask assistants to do is, when they are in a role, to decide what you do best and to decide what you need to learn. And those two conversations, the perfect timing to speak to the team that reviews your contribution, I would assume on an annual basis, is the time for you to speak to what you have accomplished and what you need to learn, and thereby ask for the opportunities for furthering your education in this role. Everyone needs to learn. And there are opportunities out there for assistants to really raise that level. And we'll speak a little later about my formula. So know that you are a catalyst for change, because every time there's a change globally or at your desk, you have to adjust what it is you do to accommodate those changes. So thus far we've spoken about confidence and perseverance. Perseverance, you never stop. It's always the win. The next is patience. Now, we know that patience is something that we all have to work to achieve. And by doing that, and we're speaking about building expertise, this is critical to your level of expertise. Because the patience to understand someone else's behavior, someone else's expectation, and your own, those are three critical dimensions to the executive assistant, to human beings actually, but certainly to the role of assisting. So supporting key relationships and alliances are critically entrenched in your ability to exhibit patience and the reliability that no matter what happens, you are going to be right there in the middle of all of the disruption to create the straight line to getting the function completed. And again, patience with others' behaviors. One of the things we get asked to coach on all the time is executive and assistant behavior. And the reality of that is, anyone at any moment can lose their sense of what's important and how to respond to that circumstance, or what's not important and how to respond to that circumstance. I am not suggesting that assistants accept what we might classify as improper behavior. That is not what I'm suggesting. But what I am saying is, if you have that partnership, and you have that friendship, and you have that mutual, has to be mutual respect in working with the team or one-on-one, then you know that you have to continuously improve in order to accommodate those executives you support, but at the same time, you have to make sure that you are being treated appropriately. And if you're not, here's where confidence comes in. You find the opportunity to say to that person with a sense of humor, don't do that again. Don't say that again. It's not polite. Now, you're not going to say that at the moment that the person is disengaged from what needs to happen, but you will find the time and the opportunity, even in passing, to say, what you said yesterday, don't do that again. Why? Just remind that person or that team, I am here to make your life better. So in doing that, I need to be viewed and responded to as a trusted colleague, because that's who I am. As you and I know, a sense of humor is what really makes this work so hard to describe. So I'll give you a quick story. I worked for a CEO who used language all the time that was not appropriate. Not at me, but at others, and at the moment. And so I created, and you can read about this, I created what I would refer to as a curse jar. And on the outside of the jar, I had letters that, the first letter of each word that he would use that I would think would not be appropriate. And there was a value for each one. So there was a charge, starting with $5, $4, $3, $2. And he comes in one day, it's on my desk, and he said, what is that? I said, that is a curse jar. And what does it do? I said, it doesn't do anything. When you say these words, and I never repeated the words, I showed the letters. When you say these, there's a value, there's a cost for that. He said, and what's going to happen with the money? I said, well, it will go to the Children's Christmas Fund. So I come in one morning, and on my desk is a $20 bill. So I hold up the bill. I said, what is this? He says, you should have come in earlier. So it didn't matter that he used that language. What mattered, and he never stopped, but what mattered was that I brought it to his attention. And I would say, you know, you're a Harvard grad. Don't you have other language? But he seemed to think that using this language allowed him the prerogative of, in many ways, intimidating other people, who then did what he wanted them to do. So he was successful in it. But as far as I was concerned, it was not language I wanted to hear all the time. But I was not about to change or to try to change who he was. Because on the other side of that, he was a great human being. He just used inappropriate language. So to be able to discern those aspects of human behavior in your role and in your relationships, by the way, this is life. Not everyone behaves the way we want them to. Not everyone speaks or represents themselves the way we want them to. But our role as assistants is not to judge. But it is to point out where change might be accommodated. So patience then. Professional assistants are unfailingly loyal. That is a very, very difficult idea to put into a position description. It's about the person. But I'm loyal to the person if they are loyal to me. If they disrespect me, it doesn't mean I'll disrespect them. It just means I may not work for you. So I have to make the decision about what's important for me to be able to sustain who I am, so that I can accommodate someone else. So knowing that you have a constantly changing job description, that you need patience, that you need to be a trusted colleague, or that you can be a trusted colleague. By the way, while I'm speaking about trust, there's confidentiality. A lot of what assistants get to learn, get to hear, get to understand is confidential. And if I ask someone to give me an essay about their working life, and they write about the person they have worked with in a way that discloses to me more than I need to know about who that person is, I will not work with that candidate. Because judgment and confidentiality are key. Someone would say, well, where is your boss? And I'd say, well, isn't he in his office? Meanwhile, I knew where he was. No, Melba, he's not in his office. Oh, gee, then he must have walked away again. Why would I tell someone where he was and what he was doing? And if I made a mistake in that, I own it. So the reality then is confidentiality. It's tied into confidence, perseverance, patience, and the last principle that I'll speak about at this moment is courage. Courage is about getting yourself to manage what you think you cannot do. And the reality of that is that you will learn that you can do it. Because I say this, and I have no reservation at all, that assistants are the most brilliant people on this planet. And why is that? Because you do have the courage to stand up for what is right. You do have the courage to work for the most brilliant people in the world. You do have the courage to know what you don't know and learn it. You do have the courage to say to someone, don't say that again, it's inappropriate. You do have the courage to say, I did not get to it, but I will. So being courageous is an integral part of what it is assistants do all the time. And you don't even know that you're being courageous. Confidence, perseverance, patience, courage. Those principles are identified by the following core competencies. Communication, collaboration. Collaboration. The ability to speak to people at all levels, from all backgrounds, regardless of who you may think they are. The ability to bring ideas together to enhance what it is you do. The ability to share information that's not confidential, but share information so that others might be able to benefit from that. That's all collaboration. And representing that aspect of this role puts you into a leadership position. Problem solving. No one gives you the answer to anything. So your natural intelligence to be able to discern where the problems most likely will be and why. Attention to detail. It's tied very closely to problem solving. You have to know when things are due and what's going to happen. Why? Because you never know. There's always a disruption or a distraction. But knowing what you have to get done and staying focused in that way is essential. Project management skills. These are the new skills that clients are now asking us to make sure that assistants will represent. Project management. To me, it's called closing the circle. Here's the assignment. Here are the individuals from whom you need to glean information. Here's what you do to make sure that all that information is in fact accurate. And make sure that you meet the deadline. Close that circle. Here's the project. Here it is from beginning to end. Here's what I have done. And at the end of the year, in preparation for your annual review, some of these functions need to be discussed without revealing all the details that you should not. But the tasks behind problem solving are integral to what it is you do. decision-making ability. Well, let me give you an example. So I had to meet, and part of my role was to meet and greet foreign dignitaries. And so we had a team come to us, and in that team there was, of course, the principal and those that surrounded him. And in the reception area, they were all standing together. My role, as I represented the CEO, was to meet this executive and escort them into the boardroom. And so I had to make a decision immediately about who I thought was the CEO of that group, the leader of that group, an international group. And so I selected one person for whatever the reason may be, and as you can well imagine, it was the wrong person. And he said, "I am not the Prime Minister, but let me introduce you to the Prime Minister." And he did just that. And I apologized and said, "Please excuse me, would you kindly follow me, please?" So the entourage and I walked into the boardroom, and that night I did not sleep because I thought, I have lost my position. So I went in the next morning and I said to my boss, "I need to tell you something." He said, "Why do you look so upset?" I said, "Let me tell you what happened. I acknowledged the wrong person as the Prime Minister yesterday." He said, "I know that." I said, "How did you know that?" He said, "He told me." I said, "He's a snitch." And so we laughed. But the reality for me was two things. Know what you're going to do, especially when it involves others. Now today we have the internet, so there's a lot of resources. But the reality is, had I not told him, what would he have thought of me? So in spite of the fact that I lost a sleepless night, the reality was, here's the mistake that I made. And ending it with just a hint of humor was equally important. So knowing, again, the decisions you make, a lot of the decisions we make are based on perception. And our perception is based on who we are and how we are raised and how we accommodate others. But perception is not fact. So I can have a lot of perceptions about different things, but I have to wait to make sure that my facts are correct, and then I can move forward. So decision making based on all of the information you can gather before you take action. Concentrating on work quality. I find today emails with typographical mistakes, emails that have no correlation to what we should be thinking about and talking about, emails that do not in any way communicate appropriately. I think we have to be very careful, especially as assistants, that what we send out is entirely accurate. And a way to do that is to pretend that you are the recipient, not the sender. Read what it is you write and make sure that there are no spelling mistakes, there are no mistakes in details, so that you can be trusted to manage information in written communication. Obtaining resources is hugely important. Create an internet, create a source of information, network, find others who do your work, and use those relationships, apply those relationships to help you to grow in what it is you do. This role, more than anything, requires self-discipline. I do not leave until I've completed the functions that I am committed or that I'm expected to do. And in today's world, this is not a 24/7 position. This is a position that requires you to be available, at least in my world, available as needed. As needed. Could be Saturday, Sunday, Friday, whatever it is. You need to always be tracking information for that executive. And new learning. There is no excuse, for not learning new skills and for not upgrading who you are in terms of your performance. There's no excuse. The final word, as we speak about the key skills that I have just identified: communication, problem solving, project management, decision-making ability, concentration on work quality, managing changing priorities, happens all the time, interpersonal ability, focus, self-discipline, and new learning. The final and most important word and action is integrity. So that the person you support can rely on you to be always, not sometimes, always truthful, always honest about what you have done, what you have not done. So let your, as I said before, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Integrity is key in this role. And why, once again, we come back to the fact that these are personal relationships, that the team or the person you support relies on you for the truth, to be told what's happening at any given moment. It doesn't mean that you speak about others, but it does mean if you have information that's important to that executive, that you share it in a way that allows that executive to be armed with the information he or she needs. The source is irrelevant. Because what you don't want to do is betray others who trust you. But what you want to do is use common sense in how you communicate what is important to that executive. Strategic support. Let's look at my formula. Strategic support plus management plus leadership equals business partnership. So how do we get there? A strategic support partner is someone who knows, as we said before, you do not change others' behaviors, you change your own. You never assume, you ask clarifying questions. You align priorities. You work from task lists. You provide critical background, ongoing feedback. You know your manager's triggers, moods, likes, and dislikes. And most important, you know that person's peak energy times. It allows you to have good judgment in when to ask and when not to ask. How to be a great manager. I put it, the first bullet for me is develop a positive vision. Encourage others, coach, mentor, network. Maintain high expertise and high expectations for yourself, and then demonstrate. And remember, please and thank you. Essential. How to be a great leader. Ask what needs to be done. If someone has to tell you that he or she is a leader, guess what? They are not. Leadership is demonstrated by behavior and respect for others. Leadership is demonstrated by contribution to making others better at what they do. Leadership is demonstrated by creating environments that are conducive for others to learn. Leadership is demonstrated by inclusiveness. Everyone who walks on this planet is entitled to respect. So leadership is not something that we get out there and say we are leaders. No, we demonstrate by our actions. We also support the culture of the companies that we work with. We don't try to change, we support. And outstanding performance to the bottom line ties into a positive vision and being able to align your priorities. So you have strategic support, management, leadership. How that becomes a win-win-win strategy. A win for executives because you are there to make sure that they maximize their efficiency. Win for the assistant as a business partner. Now you are seen as someone who's sophisticated, elegant, a great contributor, and you forge powerful relationships. The enterprise, strategic collaboration. And if the executive and the assistant are really working well together, you impact the bottom line. The role, if you want to sum it up in one sentence, is to save executives time and to make sure they're in the right place at the right time with the right information. On a personal note, I am the ultimate optimist. I believe in humankind and in the power of ideas. I believe that nothing is impossible. We make it impossible. I believe that for the next 10 years or so, the role of executive assistant is going to be even more in demand than it is today. It is a role that has been greatly misaligned. It's a role that has been greatly misunderstood. But those of us who have done this work know that companies and executives cannot survive without this function. Companies and executives cannot survive without the person behind the scenes who takes care of all of that person's needs, stated and unstated. And let me add one more dimension, family. If I work for an executive, then that person's life becomes a part of what I need to be focusing on. So executive life management is also an aspect of this role that goes without definition. It is an assumption. And we can characterize and categorize all these roles, but when you put them all together, it is about making someone else's life better. And in doing so, guess what? Your life is better. So I want to thank you for this opportunity. I want to remind assistants around the globe to keep a positive vision, to keep learning, to know that what you do is hugely important and relevant to business everywhere. And those individuals who hire assistants learn that the fit of the person to the executive or the team is critical, but also make sure that this person knows why they do this work. I know I can do it. I know that I can really outpace most. The question, though, is why. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Once again, let me take a moment to thank you for allowing me to participate in your wonderful program. I'm going to ask you to allow me to read my closing statement. And why I'm doing that is because I do not want to miss what I think may be some essential ideas with which I'd like to leave you. So let me start by saying the people in the ranks of top management have always had a list of things that they can't do without help from a real, live human being. Someone who knows virtually everything of consequence about the executive and the company for which he or she works. I would argue that this list is typically longer than it was 10 years ago, and that the new executive assistant who helps to manage this list is now one of the most important players in the entire organization. Why is this role more difficult now? In recent years, professional executive assistants have, in fact, become a sub-layer of management itself. And the more, not less, that they do makes them even more indispensable. Today, assistants focus on the destination, not the difficulty. They manage carefully engineered schedules and time-critical contingency plans. They exercise a form of leadership and management within their companies that is less visible than traditional norms, yet no less significant. They keep pace with executives who often travel 80% of the time. And they keep up with changing technology and information overload, which requires a good filtering strategy. Their sustainable advantage is in their ability to manage these indispensable skills, which are among the key aspects of the role. Executive assistants are champions of the workplace. Those who are inclined toward this profession discover that the inherent complexities and challenges produce immense satisfaction and a sense of contribution and accomplishment. Executive assistants draw from all their talents, intelligence, developed intuition, common sense, and positive attitudes in their pursuit of professional excellence. The talented executive assistant is among the most sought after level of hire today. Busy executives are desperate for quality, focused, experienced support in all areas of their lives. The new executive assistant always will be essential. This career is here to stay. Thank you.